this threshold season, this liminal season, this time when spring is not bursting forth, but winter's no longer holding tight. There's a promise held, maybe in the air, maybe only in the light. There's a whisper in the trees if you stand to listen, an excitement building for what is to come. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast, your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I'm here today with a solo episode all about the Wheel of the Year celebration of Imbolc. But first, have you ever held back from speaking your truth or showing up and being vocal and visible out of fear of what others might think? Me too. What I didn't realize when I first started the journey that led me to where I sit today, speaking to you, was that this fear of being too loud, too much, too different, it wasn't just in my head. It was ancestral. It was generational. It was called the witch wound. And it's a wound that I share with most, if not each and every one of you. A deep, inherited fear that whispers, if I speak my truth, I'll be cast out. If I stand in my power, I won't be safe. Instead of letting that ancestral wound keep me quiet, keep me small, I chose to heal it. I reclaimed my voice, my rhythms, my rest, and I built this business that nourishes me instead of depleting me. And now, I help others do the same, to create lives that allow them to remember the wisdom that lives deep inside of them, to feel connected to their bodies, their inner power, to other women, and to the earth herself. If something in you is stirring right now, if you're ready to stop shrinking, stop apologizing, and start showing up fully in your power, connected to your own body and the magic of the earth, I'd love to support you. On February 18th, I'm offering a free masterclass all about the witch wound, how it shows up in your life, how it's holding you back, and most importantly, how to heal it. I would love so much if you would join me. The sign-up link, as always, will be below in the show notes, or you can head to myluminouslife.ca/witchwound. All right, lovelies. Thank you so much for being here with me for this episode, all about Imbolc, all about this beautiful threshold into a season that can maybe most accurately be called, as Carmen Spagnola does in her book, The Spirited Kitchen, Winterspring. I've spoken and shared about Imbolc for several years now, and I usually share from a place of telling the story of how this is the beginning of spring in the Celtic calendar. And while in some essences that is true, I read something today that prompted me to sit and consider how I language this transition, because yes, there is plenty of myth and language around Brigid returning to the land at this time and laying her green mantle over the earth. Yes, in parts of the world, the snowdrops are peeking through and blooming. There's life stirring just below the surface. But for many of us, and even in those places where things are greening up and beginning to think about growing, there is still the risk and or real existence of snow on the land. And so this term Winterspring feels really potent to me. And I've always thought about Imbulk as a threshold time, right? We're not bursting forth into fully formed spring. The spring equinox, the height of this season, if you will, is when in most places things are truly in bloom and spring feels fully fledged and formed. Although again, not everywhere. I can't count the number of spring equinoxes where we've had snow in the place that I live in, Calgary. But it is this liminal time, right? Imbulk is this felt sense almost, the shifting of the light, the pulse beneath the snow, the quickening, right? The word Imbulk is thought to mean in the belly, and it's likely in reference to the ewes who are heavily pregnant with their lambs. It's lambing season. There's a lot of association with milk at this time of year, and again, the cows are beginning to eat new grasses instead of last year's grasses, the fresh shoots, and so their milk is flowing more freely. The ewe's milk is flowing to nourish their new baby lambs. And that's where the title of this episode comes from, In the Belly of Winterspring, which I think really speaks again to this threshold moment. We're still in the belly. We are preparing to birth forth back into warmth and light. But there is still this moment of pause. The Cailleach isn't maybe totally gone. Brigid might be coming back, but there's still this kind of moment of transition between the two. And I was actually reading a little bit about some of the stories around this time of year in Ireland and Scotland actually remind me a lot of the saying that we have here in North America, or in Canada at least, about the month of March. In like a lion, out like a lamb, or in like a lamb, out like a lion. I'd love to know if you've heard that one. My mom always used to say it. And I was reading some stories about how there's sayings or myth around the Cailleach, and how if February comes in with hard snows, then you can prepare for an early spring. But if February comes in mild, be careful, because the Cailleach is not going to loosen her grip on the land anytime soon, right? A longer winter, a later spring is in store. And it's just speaking to some of that really beautiful folk wisdom that so many of us discredit these days and have lost. It ties in also to Groundhog Day, which we're going to talk about today, because the celebration of Imbolc on February 1st is closely tied to the Christianization of this celebratory moment, which is Candlemas on February 2nd. And Groundhog Day in the United States and North America is a German tradition that was brought over, a German Candlemas tradition that was brought over. And it wasn't groundhogs, I think it was badgers or something. I can't remember. I didn't put it in my notes, but there is this kind of sense of, once again, these traditions, these older folk traditions, celebrations, moments of the year that were important didn't stop being important when the older traditions stopped being quite as practiced, perhaps, but they were often folded in to the spreading of Christianity. Speaking of this moment of time, right? This liminal moment, this threshold moment, the dates that we have. So Imbulk is one of the 4 fire festivals, or 4 cross-quarter celebrations in the Celtic Wheel of the year. And the reason they're called cross-quarter celebrations or cross-quarter festivals is because they happen at the midway points between the solstices and the equinoxes. So halfway through the quarter, if we're telling time by those solar calculations. And so the actual landing of Imbulk at February 1st is a rather modern invention, right? We talked recently on this podcast about how the Gregorian calendar that we follow now wasn't even in use in the British Isles and Ireland until I think it was 1752. So this like tying of this seasonal festival to a specific date in our solar calendar, in our modern Gregorian calendar, isn't entirely accurate. There's different dates that we can play with when we think about Imbulk and actually all of the cross-quarter festivals, all of the seasonal beginnings, so Samhain around October 31st, and Imbulk now, and Beltane around May 1st, and then Lunasa around August 1st. None of these would have been tied to these modern Gregorian calendar dates. They work. They're nice and tidy for us, and so if that's the date that you want to use, by all means do. But there are some other dates to consider. One would be the second new moon after the winter solstice. Lo and behold, that is also the Chinese New Year. So there's some wisdom there, and we do know that the ancient Celtic peoples likely followed, at least at some point in time, the Cailleach calendar. And so that is a lunar calendar. So this date would make a lot of sense. This year, that date is February 17th. If you've had your head in the sand and haven't heard everybody yelling about the year of the horse, beginning on February 17th, that is the date of the second new moon after the winter solstice. The other date that is a shifting date based on when the solstices and the equinoxes fall is the exact astrological midway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And so this year, that is February 3rd. And that's also 15 degrees of Aquarius, which is another way to look at it, is again looking at the astrological movements. And so whether or not you are celebrating on the 1st of February or at sundown on the evening of January 31st, because we know that all of these Celtic celebrations began at the beginning of the Celtic day, which was dusk. And or if you're celebrating on the 3rd, or if you're celebrating on the 17th, or if you're choosing to mark the beginning of Imbulk by what you're feeling and seeing in the land around you where you live, all of these are true times or dates, I think. You know, they're all a beautiful aligned way to think about this threshold season, this liminal season, this time when spring is not bursting forth, but winter's no longer holding tight. There's a promise held, maybe in the air, maybe only in the light. There's a whisper in the trees, if you stand to listen, an excitement building for what is to come. This moment has been marked for centuries upon centuries, millennia, really. We do have some evidence of the celebration going back all the way to Neolithic Ireland. So it's a seasonal marker that predates, by a long shot, both Christianity and the modern calendar. And as with all of these Wheel of the Year celebrations or moments, it's not about precision so much, although the solar festivals are precise, but it's about relationship, right? The seasons, when the seasons begin, is about that relationship with the land, with the animals, with the cycles of fertility and survival that those who came before us were so much more intimately connected to. Some really exciting news came through. I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago. It's relatively recent, though. Everybody knows about St. Patrick's Day. And St. Patrick is the patron saint of Ireland, and, you know, he drove the snakes out of Ireland, except there were no snakes in Ireland, and so likely it's an allusion to him driving the pagans underground, the pagan practices, or even perhaps the women associated with the goddesses underground. And there's been a lot of rising up of reclamation of some of the older ways in Ireland. And Brigid is a Christian saint, but she is a Christian saint who is she's an ancient deity of the Tuatha Dé Danann who became a Christian saint, shall we say. Again, one more example of Christianity taking the practices, the beliefs, the traditions that already existed in the lands that they moved into and folding them in to the history, the myth of that religion. And so a couple of years ago, or just last year, I can't remember, after much petitioning and talk about it, February 1st became an official holiday in Ireland. It is St. Brigid's Day. And so we have this beautiful recognition of the divine feminine, going back to this goddess of the spring, whether or not she's viewed as Christian saint or pagan goddess, right? She has a lot of the same properties in both those roles. She is a goddess of the hearth, of the well, so fire and water. She's a goddess of the threshold. There's a lot of threshold imagery with Brigid, including that she was born on the threshold of a house. Her mother had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So she's a true threshold goddess, a deity. And she's a goddess of healing, smithcraft, and poetry, sometimes referred to as a triple goddess, but only in that she has multiple aspects, I think. Again, originally a member of the Tuatha Dé Danann, who are the supernatural beings of pre-human Ireland, often referred to as gods and goddesses, later diminished to fairies. And so she would have been of the she. She was a midwife. And so again, there's that threshold moment there, right? The guardian of the home and the heart. And she cycles through Maiden, Mother, Crone through the year. So some of the mythology we have for her is that she goes from Maiden at Imbulk to Mother at Beltane and through the summer months, and then she becomes the Cailleach in the winter. And then the Cailleach drinks from the well of youth and becomes Brigid again at Imbolc. Or sometimes they switch places. In a lot of mythology, the Cailleach goes to sleep under the hills and Brigid returns to the land. But regardless, she comes, she brings her green mantle and she lays it over the land and the grasses grow once again. So I love this time. I've been working with Brigid and her energies and everything she signifies for ever since I met her, really, learned about her. And I love this moment, again, this promise coming back into the land. So as I've alluded to or referenced, we can really see here how the energies of Imbulk are still not big, bright, flaming new beginnings. Yes, we've got the horse energy galloping forward from here. And every being needs a little bit of time to gain momentum. And so too does this beginning, right? We are still in the chilly cold. We're not racing off the start here. We're slowly easing into a little more momentum. So it's not a season of productivity. It is not a season for grabbing the bull by the horns. It's a season of slow awakening, of initiation, of inspiration, of coming clarity, right? We're into the spring. That's the direction of east. East is associated with the element of air, typically in the way that I was taught, although you could also associate it with the element of water because there's a lot of rain in the spring and the wells are bursting forth and the milk is flowing, and Brigid herself is very much associated with wells and water. So there's a bit of both there. But air is typically associated with communication and clarity and new beginnings. And there is also this sense of protecting the fragile beings, right? We have the baby lambs being born, tender new shoots, tender new life that's just arising. And so what is rising in you as we step over this threshold, into this threshold, rather, of Winterspring, of Imbulk? What is tender and new that is beginning to grow, to take root beneath the soil? I spoke to that a couple of episodes ago, that growth begins beneath the ground. The initial work of growth is not visible. And so especially in those places where Imbulk arrives with snowstorms and cold, but just some more light, where is that growth happening? What roots are you laying down? What structures are you putting into place? What ideas or dreams of greenery and growth are you beginning to imagine here? Letting yourself experience this season by getting outside into that changing light, walking the land, connecting. I love connecting with trees at this time of year, especially asking permission, laying my hand on them, because I feel like I can feel them waking up, that pulse of energy beginning. There's so many ways of listening, of connecting with the season here. We gathered last week, if you're listening to this with the day that it comes out, we gathered on Thursday to celebrate this moment, this Imbulk threshold in ceremony, as we always do. At the Wheel of the Year ceremonies happen 8 times a year, and everybody's invited. And I'm sorry that this episode is getting to you after. If you would like to come celebrate the next one with us, it'll be the spring equinox, and that's all up on the website already. And the celebration, the ceremonial marking of these moments, of these turnings of the wheel, have been such a potent anchor for me in my own life and practice. And I know that they continue to be one of the most beloved aspects of being in the Wise Wild Woman Mentorship Program as well. For those who are, they're included for everybody there, but they're also open to anyone to join. It's such a beautiful way to not walk across these threshold moments alone, to do it together, in connection, in sisterhood, with the power of ritual behind us. So, by way of closing today, I want to just reassure you, you don't need to know what's coming yet. You don't need to act yet. You are not behind. At this moment of Imbulk, this threshold into the promise of spring, in the belly of Winterspring, can you listen? Maybe you light a candle. Maybe you step outside. Maybe you ask your body what feels 1 degree warmer or closer to coming to life than it did a month ago. As always, if this episode resonated for you, please like and subscribe, comment, rate, review, whatever is appropriate to the platform on which you're receiving it. Please share it with a friend. I'm always here as well. If you have any questions or topics that you'd like me to cover, I would love to hear from you, or even just to hear how this one landed for you. And as always, I will be back again, same time next week. Bye for now.